Aedyr is a country rich with custom, and they are known for their strict adherence to them. Their customs run the gamut from grand celebrations, like the Feast of Feasts, to mundane superstitions, such as ways to avoid spef addiction. This volume will focus primarily on bigger celebrations, as no one knows how to throw an extravagant party quite like an Aedyran. The biggest and most important of all Aedyr customs is the Feast of Feasts. This week-long celebration happens the first week of Fonestu, deep summer, and is dedicated to honoring the life of the first Verkonig. Each day of the week is devoted to some aspect of the Verkonig's life. There are very specific dishes to be served at each meal. The Feast of Feasts originally began as a festival celebrating the birth of the Verkonig's first son, and soon became a yearly occurrence during the week of his birthday. Currently, Aedyrans simply use it as an excuse for a party, and pull out all of the stops in an effort to outdo the previous year. Unless you wonder, as I did, which Verkonig is honored during the Feast of Feasts, it is always the current Verkonig. For each Verkonig is the first and only Verkonig. A special custom that arose at some point during the Feast of Feasts. Sweet treats started as a way to keep children occupied so the parents could dine in peace. While it is still used for that today, significance has been added to it. Each treat is placed in a container, usually small metal boxes, and hidden somewhere on the property. After everything has been hidden, the children are sent out to find the treasures. It is said now that the hidden treats represent Glanfathan artifacts, and the children are the explorers, bringing the riches back to their new and rightful owners. When the original colonists for Aedyr traveled to the new land to found the Deerwood in the name of the Aedyran Verkonig, they encountered the Glanfathan people. The Carnival of the Mask celebrates this meeting. Originally, it was merely a formal reenactment, as a play, of the tensions between the Glanfathans and the Aedyran settlers, but it has since evolved into much more than that. Participants choose sides and come dressed in elaborate outfits depicting which group they have decided to align themselves with, Aedyrans or Glanfathans. Everyone attends a masquerade ball, and this party replaces any semblance of the play that was presented. Winter's End was never anything more than an excuse for a celebration, and it hasn't changed in all the years it has existed in Aedyr. It takes place during winter dusk and lasts all 3 days. People use the time to reflect on the year, celebrate their lives, and remember the dead, especially those who have passed in the recent year. Glanfathan customs can seem primitive and unsophisticated to some, but all customs begin with a ritual or superstition, so why should theirs be considered less than any other? If they are examined closely, Glanfathan celebrations stem from a deep and rich culture, and all tie into their history in a significant way. The Festival of the Ancients takes place during spring dawn, and it is the time to celebrate the Glanfathans settling in their Glanfath. It is a simple 3-day ceremony that is mostly centered on feasts. These feasts are set up around the ruins scattered through Aedyr Glanfath. Wreaths made from tree branches and flowers are placed at the ruins, and prayers are said to the gods, thanking them for health and prosperity. The cleansing started as a protest, recreating the hardships wrought upon the Glanfathans by the Aedyran colonists when they started settling the Deerwood. It has morphed over the years and is now used more as a game mixed with a teaching tool to inform your Glanfathans about the history of their people. The cleansing takes place on New Year and Mid-Year, and now acts as a metaphor for real events instead of a recreation of the events themselves. Zarep effigies are placed throughout the forest, hollow clay shells filled with sweets and gifts. The children then search the woods for the effigies and destroy them, cleansing the forest so they Glanfathans can move in and occupy the areas. After the area has been cleared, they gather for a celebration and feast where the elders tell the young members the true story of their people's history. A combination of a day of remembrance and celebratory feast, the holiday of the Black Tree is held on the second day of autumn falling, when the trees are still colorful but losing their leaves, and the land is becoming cold and dark. Glanfathans use the day to tell the story of the War of Black Trees, and remember those who were lost. During the morning, the adults hang elaborate garlands from the tree branches. The garlands are made from red, orange, and yellow flowers, and represent the flames that swept through the forests of Aedyr Glanfath, destroying everything in their paths. After a morning of fasting and reflection, the children are set to run through the trees, tearing down the garlands and bringing them back to the feast, decorating the tables with wildflowers, turning the horror of war into something beautiful. Then they eat, cheering the peace they now have with the Deerwooden people, and toast to many more years of peace to come. Also of note in Glanfathan culture is their abundance of traveling customs. Being a semi-nomadic people, they practice customs to ensure their safety while on the move. If you are taking a quick trip, purchase a gift for someone you are visiting and leave it at your home. If something important is left undone, such as giving a gift to a loved one, you will always return to finish the task. If you are taking a longer trip, leave remembrances of your trip, no matter how well you know the road. Drop some pebbles along the way or tie ribbon to the tree branches. Mark your path away, and you'll always have a safe and easy trip back. Evil spirits and dangerous creatures are everywhere in our world. If you decorate your cart with masks, they will scare away any danger that might otherwise approach. But you must decorate your cart anew every trim, or the evil won't be fooled by your ruse. Only the hardiest of explorers would dare take the long, dangerous trek to the Living Lands. While there is no denying its beauty, the diversity of plant life alone is an herbologist's dream. The inherent risk in blithely trekking through these pristine hills is more than most should undertake. Let me take a moment to tell you about the land itself. Rolling hills, greenery, and sun. The whole area feels like a succession of hills and valleys, each with its own ecosystem. While that declaration is a tad extreme, it can almost be said to be true. The combination of sun, geographical location, proximity to fresh water, valley depth, and the existence of hot springs have given Living Lands a wide breadth of flora and fauna. Walk down a hillside into a valley and you will find lush, verdant hills. Climb the next rise and you might see nothing but rock and boiling mineral springs. And the creatures. In my travels, I've seen it all. This place never ceases to amaze me. I will never forget my encounter with the trolls of the Living Lands. I had just narrowly avoided being consumed by a giant plant, more on that later, and was running as fast as I could to get away from it. I broke the crest of the hill, and the valley below was wide, green, wet, and covered with low, thick-branched leaves. Vines grew everywhere. Between the trees, across the tops of them, down to the ground. It was a mess of vine and green. Cautiously, I worked my way down the basin, keeping an eye out for anything suspicious, and it's a good thing I did so. I noticed not all the trees appeared to be trees. I froze, dropping to the ground in an effort to minimize my appearance. One of the trees moved, lumbering slowly away from the cluster. It's then that I realized it was a troll, stepping out from among the group of trees it had been resting against. With a few more steps, I would have walked right into their home. The camouflage these trolls exhibited far exceed any I had ever seen before. I hope to return again in the future and observe them more. While I have never seen them, I have read reports of giant insects in the living lands. Centipedes, flies, mosquitoes, and hornets all 10 times the size you would see them elsewhere. Imagine making camp. You've just gotten everything set up. There's a nice fire going next to your shelter. Something is gently simmering in the cooking pot. You sit down, finally feeling like you can relax after a trying day. You feel a tickling at your feet, insistent and prolonged. Reaching down to brush whatever it is away, your hand comes in contact with something hard, long, and flexible winding its way around your boot. You look down to see a centipede, the size of your arm, casually making its way over your feet toward the far side of your camp. You'd get out of that camp, wouldn't you? That's exactly what my friend did when he realized he had started his fire over a centipede nest. And lest we forget, do not let your guard down around the plants. They were bright pink and grew in a circle around a central stalk. What an aroma. I lack the words to describe how delectable it was. Sweet, fruity, and light with just a hint of something tangy. Looking closer, I saw some berries growing on the stalk in the center of the flowers. No, I just had to have them. So I started pushing my way through the flowers. Then the vines growing around the base of the plant began to twitch, and the blooms turned toward me. It was at that moment I saw the blooms weren't actually flowers, but hinged jaws. I had been fooled by his camouflage. I quickly retreated, pushing my way back out, just in time. The blooms slammed shut. If I had still been standing there, trying in vain to reach the berries, I wouldn't be writing this book today. The archipelago winds its way between the great Eastern Ocean and the restless ocean, hundreds of small islands in the midst of the water. Few dare brave its treacherous rapids. A fewer still have returned to tell a tale of their adventures through it. Travel between the two oceans is virtually impossible. Great storms hammer any ships foolhardy enough to attempt to navigate, and this alone should be enough to deter anyone from attempting the voyage, as untold ships have gone down, tossed against the rocks. The weather and treacherous rocks are only a precursor to the actual horror of the archipelago, the terrors of the deep. No one knows how many creatures stalk the oceans, waiting for unsuspecting sailors to drift into their waters, but we do know of some. The barbed ravager. A giant shark that is known to ram passing vessels, trying to knock sailors off the deck and smash a hole in the hull. It has tremendous spines protruding from its side and back that are presumed to be poisonous. The largest sighted barbed ravager, with survivors, was estimated to be almost 30 feet long. The winding serpent. Smaller around than the ravager, but potentially longer, the winding serpent attacks in small packs, usually 3 to 8. They have long, sharp heads, somewhat reminiscent of a barracuda. Like the ravager, they repeatedly slam into the side of a ship, hoping to crack a hole in it or knock someone from the deck. They have also been known to swim to the depths and shoot up out of the ocean, landing on the deck, coiling and winding their way around, snapping up any crew they can before plunging back into the ocean. The Leviathan. Imagine the largest whale you have ever seen. The Leviathan is at least 10 times that size. By the time a ship sees a Leviathan, it is already too late. As they rise from the depths, the water around them begins to spin and sink, creating a whirlpool. The Leviathan's body surrounds the hapless vessel, preventing escape, and as it goes down, the enormous mouth opens, pulling all aboard to their watery deaths. The Aedyr. All the creatures you've read about in this book are nothing compared to the Aedyr. Barely the size of a man, what they lack in size and strength, they make up for in numbers and terrifying viciousness. Their lower halves are a mass of tentacles, like an octopus or squid, but more numerous. The tentacles are long black whips with suction cups on the underside and small thorny barbs on the top. The sheer number of tentacles gives them frightening speed when walking on land, pulling themselves forward almost as fast as a running horse. While they vaguely resemble a human from the waist up, any extended examination proves how wrong that assumption is. Long, stringy black hair falls from the top of their heads to cover a face taken directly from a nightmare. A wide, gaping mouth cuts across the bottom of its head from ear to ear, full of wicked, dagger-like teeth. 2 large round eyes are sunken into its head, black as coal, shining with a malevolent fire. A small antenna protrudes from the middle of its forehead, ending in a small nodule that can glow with an eerie blue light. One can imagine a sailor on the deck of his ship at night, looking out across the black water, blood freezing as countless lights appear beneath the surface, rising toward him as the Aedyr swarm upward. Because they seem to be more octopus than man, they can collapse in on themselves, fitting into spaces no person should be able to. The smallest crack in a hull, the slightest separation between boards offers them entrance. It is not unknown for them to slaughter an entire crew from hold up to deck by infiltrating the ship from underneath. Fortunately, they do not seem to have spread too far outside of the archipelago, but there may come a day when Aedyr attacks become commonplace.